Fortnite are trying to diversify, right, away from this battle royale model that's brought them all their success initially. I think it's easy for people to forget that initially Fortnite wasn't going to be battle royale, and then they added it in, and that is what brought them the success, right? So now they're going away from that, which is brave, but I think sensible. I mean, they want to be this big kind of multiverse-esque platform, and that makes complete sense. Okay, and initially they tried to do that with their no-build mode, and to be honest, the people that play that must be psychopaths. Like, how can you physically enjoy that game? That must be, goodness me, don't get me started, right? Thankfully, they moved away from that, especially in competitive now, with the introduction of this new ESL format. Now, if you've watched other esports, which I had a little bit before Fortnite, you'll know ESL is an event organizer that's done CSGO events, but basically all kinds of esports events in the past. So them coming in seems like a good thing, right? And now they've introduced all these other formats that, capture the flag, hardpoint, these things we've seen before, basically. And I wonder how much success it's going to have. I do think you can capture that Fortnite audience, which does definitely exist, and kind of put them on to something like that. But are you really going to capture those hardcore people that really like to play those competitive game modes? I'm not sure you are. But it's cool to see it, and the Fortnite World Cup and stuff that it feeds into through this ESL thing is going to be super cool. And there's a lot of money there. I mean, the people that don't know, the premise basically is you do get money if you win your individual event, and there's about, 30 different esports or something. But the big money goes to orgs, so organisations, the things that basically the players play under, so like a football team effectively for esports. And if your team does the best overall at that esports World Cup, then you get a lot of that money, right? I think that makes sense. And there's a lot of sports at the moment that are changing. So the other sports that I mainly follow are triathlon and athletics and sailing. So with athletics, you have Michael Johnson stepping in, and there's some rumours around that I haven't fully looked into, where he's basically going to change the league. And at the moment, it's the Diamond League is the main athletics league, which has quite a lot of money and fans and stuff, but it's hidden behind a paywall for a lot of people. I believe that's definitely the case now in America, and there was some controversy there surrounding that, right? Okay, triathlon I follow quite closely as well. I used to do that when I was younger. And triathlon, I've always enjoyed watching the Olympic distances, but apparently that is not what's popular. Apparently the longer distances, so Ironman and half Ironmans, are really what captures an audience. Anecdotally, from podcast statistics, I've been told that's true. I've listened to people say that. And now, you had what was the PTO and had the PTO Opens now become the T100 Tour, trying to step in and change that world, and they've got a lot of money invested in that. They've got about 20 athletes on a year-round contract where the minimum wage is like 150k a year to get paid to do triathlon. That is a lot of money when you think about this element of the sport as just one of basically 4 different professional leagues. You have the Ironman Pro Series now, or just what you could call previously just people that did Ironmans, and they get a lot of their money from sponsorship because it's such a participant heavy element of the sport. You have the T100, which is kind of the middle distance now, which kind of competes with the half Ironmans. Then you have the normal Olympic distance, and again, these people are making money off their national governing bodies. So British Triathlon would be our home example. And if they don't have the equivalent of that, then they're probably making it from sponsorship or being funded, or to be honest, being funded by parents or something, if they're competing there without any sponsorship, which is very, very rare because it's normally pretty, rich countries that compete in triathlon because you need a bike, which is expensive. Okay. And then you have the Super League, which is kind of doing cool stuff, mixing it up. And along with that, you have Xterra. and, there's other leagues like Challenge that do exist, but, I wouldn't say are fully out there in terms of viewership. Like, I follow the sport and haven't seen too much from it. Okay. That's triathlon, so that's obviously having a lot of change. And going back to athletics, they've announced that they're going to get prize money from the Olympics. So they don't need a national governing body. If they win their event at the Olympics, they will make money. That's a really interesting change from world athletics. A lot of people don't really understand how the Olympics works. A lot of people think, oh my God, it's such a scandal. Oh my goodness, it's such a scandal that these athletes are going to the Olympics, training for 4 years and not making any money. In reality, obviously, the International Olympic Committee does make a lot of money. Like, they do sell the broadcasting rights. They do have a lot of money coming their way. Billions and billions coming their way. But what they do is, for each of their sports, there's a governing body. So World Athletics, World Sailing. They used to have more weird names. Like, the sailing used to be the International Sailing Federation or something. But now a lot of them are just world and then the sport. And it's actually those, I believe it's those that get the money and they decide how it's allocated. So then they can give away money through the year, through the following 3 years, through the World Series that they run. Okay, some of them may get extra money from broadcasting rights, but a lot of that money goes to funding those world authorities and actually making world championships, and kind of hoping that feeds down through all the levels. That is my understanding of how most sporting organisations run that funding. Sailing obviously receives that funding, but sailing is a very weird sport in that there's so many different levels. You have that Olympic level, but then like triathlon, you have other leagues, so professional leagues like the TP52 circuit, where and there's so many more like this, where the helm is normally the owner of the boat, and then the entire rest of the boat, however many people that might be, 20 people or something, are all professional and employed. Okay? There's many, many examples of those two, the Olympic sailors and then the professional keelboat kind of area, I guess you'd call it. Right. But then there's a few that are trying to break into the mass viewership, minimal participation market that the T100 is trying to break into likewise. So, how successful have these been? Not very successful. Sailing is not by any means the world's most popular sport. I mean, I think you could go around and ask anyone and figure that out for yourself, and you probably know that. But for us that are in the sport, it's harder for us to make out, right? But anyway, Larry Ellison, who's founded Oracle, who I don't even know how you would have heard of the guy. I mean, his companies, does he even run them anymore? Do they even exist? I mean, Oracle does exist, but what the fuck does it actually do? I couldn't tell you. Some database shit, which always means absolutely nothing to most people, in my opinion. And he is a big fan of sailing, and he actually, funded an America's Cup campaign, and the America's Cup is where the real big bucks, like hundreds of millions a year, goes. And it's basically a technology race. It's the F1 of sailing. But he won it a year, did his thing, but then he lost it. Right. So then he started his own league with the boats that he built. And it's called SailGP. And there is so much money going into this. I mean, okay, in terms of business, maybe it's not that much money. But for any normal person, there's 10 events over the year. Each event has £300,000 prize money for the winning team. And they don't have to do the logistics or technology development or anything. They just have to turn up at the events, sail the boats, have a coach, have a few staff to help actually manage the logistics on game day. But outside of that, I don't believe they do too much other stuff. And there's obviously, that's a lot of money. And then there's £1 million for the winner of the season. And this is not including like any sponsorships or anything you get. Because obviously SailGP, whilst also putting up the prize money, runs the broadcast at an extremely good level, sells the rights around the world. For those places that they don't sell the rights, they put it on YouTube. So it has a good amount of viewership, and they can get sponsors. And I mean, some of these guys, I'm pretty sure, have a charity under their name as well, just so they can collect donations and basically just fund the advertisements to get more donations on their sales. Yeah. But I don't know how long it's got a timeline on to how long it's going to take to be profitable, and I just don't see a world where that kind of money is sustainable. I mean, the viewership consistently is at a higher level than sailing's ever seen, but can it maintain that level to where it really keeps the best sailors, which at the moment SailGP arguably does have most of the world's best sailors consistently competing? Can it maintain enough prize money to keep all those people motivated to stay within that discipline of the sport? And if so, will people really keep watching? If they've really attracted an external audience, then yes. And that's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy in that if the viewership's there, then the sponsorship will be there, and then those sailors will stay. But if they haven't in time, then that really is a ticking time bomb. And I mean, it's really the same with T100. They have just as much funding, probably. I mean, it's not from an individual, it's from actual fundraising. But they're on a similar kind of, ticking time bomb. All of these different sports things, the Fortnite World Cup. Yeah, going back to that. How long does this Saudi money last? They're trying to clean up their reputation. So many... the America's Cup regattas have been there. They clearly get paid. There's a Youth World Championships that I've qualified for that I don't even know whether I'm going to go, but it's going to be in Saudi Arabia. All of this because they're trying to clean up their image, and that's where the money's coming from. All of these unsustainable piles of money, just moving around the world. It just does make you question when there's so many issues in our world. I'm not talking about wars, I'm more talking about starvation and healthcare and all of that stuff. How is it that we're really allowing this to be the way our money works? And, recently in uni I've been learning about this guy called Herbert Marcuse, and he's got some interesting ideas. I'll try and do my best to summarise real quick, because I think it does give a good insight and helps to understand what this sports thing is all about. And, quick summary, it ultimately goes back to this distraction from the world we're living in, doesn't it? And that distraction, actually, it feels extremely positive to us. We really appreciate having that distraction, because otherwise we are effectively going around in pain. But I think we need to realise that there's a lot wrong, and that this sport stuff is not actually helping us, And it's the same with consumerism. You're going and buying stuff that you don't need. And when you buy that stuff that you don't really need, you're getting a little bit of satisfaction. It feels like, all these things we're buying, like football shirts, they represent these ideals that we agree with. Like, we agree with this team because, oh my word, they never give up, right? We're like, oh, well, we never give up. We have those same ideals that are embodied by that football shirt. We view them as almost like a friend. And in purchasing them, it's like, oh, before we thought we were never going to see that shirt ever again because we weren't going to buy it. We weren't going to have it in our house. But now we've bought it. We've almost saved a part of ourselves, a good friend that we thought we were never going to see again. We've saved them. That is why it feels so good that you're buying that t-shirt. Not because it actually provides you any real tangible benefit. You've been tricked into thinking you will find some benefit. And it's not really a trick, but it is, Like, you don't need to, you're not actually saving a friend. You're not actually saving yourself when you buy that shirt. You just feel like you are. You provided yourself a little bit of satisfaction, and that distracts you again from all the real problems in the world. Distracts you from the fact that money, those resources that you've just used, could be going towards something else. And, that sounds crazy, but Marcuse's argument, effectively, is that that's all true, and then all of our structures have been rigged so that we can't see that that's a problem. So when we're asked how is our country doing, how do we look at it? We look at it with GDP, gross domestic product. And that is, in reality, a measurement of how much we're buying and selling, right? So the measurement of how well our country is doing is how much people are buying and selling. Does that really feel like the way we should be measuring our countries, right? And now it does feel more rational that we measure it with gross national happiness, whatever that thing is called that the UN have recently implemented. But I think it's important to know that that is not just an objective mental health measurement. If you look at the stats on countries' objective mental health measurements, then it's a very different story to the gross national happiness thing. And I mean, the things they're measuring happiness with are very, very different to mental health. And I think if you actually were to ask people, those mental health things probably correlate more than those things that the UN have decided to make people happy. Like, they've decided that 1/6 of happiness is people's access to education or some. I can't actually remember the six things, but you can look it up. The World Happiness Report, run by the UN. I'm doing it now. Happiness Report, UN elements. Okay. Right. So I say that, and then Mark Manson, who you may or may not know, is this author who wrote this very, very famous and successful self-help book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. He has kind of travelled around, and his opinion was that, yes, these people are happy, but it's in the moment happy. And I mean, they may take drugs or something, I don't know, I haven't been there. The difficulty with, I guess, that kind of happiness is that in the long run, you're not really gaining that much for society. Like, overall, in these third world countries, we have so much more than we ever had in the past. And that is only because we've been dissatisfied and unhappy. Like, if you were to go back 100 years and everyone was just happy all the time, then what motivation would there be to work or do anything or get anything done, right? It's only because we're unhappy. Like, it's only because I've been dissatisfied recently that I'm making this podcast video, whatever it's going to be. Commentary, I suppose. And I'm not sure how I feel about that.